Well, Mr. Donahoo, why don't you start by talking about growing up on Collins Avenue? What was that like in the 40s and 50s?
Well, I can tell you that I lived first on Morningside Drive, just one block up from here growing up. And that was on the site of what is now the Acworth Post Office. And then in 1957, my mother, Ernestine and George Donahoo, built a new home on Collins Avenue. So my tenure in Acworth has been on Collins Avenue because I purchased my relative's home many, many years ago, and I currently live on Collins Avenue. So from Morningside Drive to Collins Avenue.
A long way, wasn't it?
Oh, a much long, yes.
And what year did you say they moved to Collins Avenue?
I was born in 1945, and we moved to Collins Avenue in 1957.
57. So
Yes, sir.
12 years on Morningside.
That's correct.
And that's where the post office is now?
Currently is where it is now.
Uh-huh. Wow. Oh, well, why don't you talk about then just what was Acworth like when you were growing up?
Well, with my family, my dad originally from Cartersville, Georgia, and my mother being from Acworth, she was one of four daughters of Niecy and Ernest Collins. And my granddaddy, Ernest Collins, had the furniture store and also ran the funeral home. Many years ago, Acworth was the home for John Collins, who fought in the Revolutionary War. He was a captain. And when the land grant was given, he was able to acquire 225 acres, which is currently the residence that I live in. He built that home in 1838 and lived there until his death. He is buried in the Morris Hill Cemetery not far from here. And through the years, it has been owned and lived in by residents of the Collins, or excuse me, descendants of the Collins family. And in recent years, my aunt and uncle lived in it. And then after they passed away, my cousin, who lives in Nashville, made me one of those offers I couldn't refuse, so I purchased the house in 2001. So I've owned the house since then.
Uh-huh. Can you talk a little bit about what life was like?
Life in Acworth was great. It was what do people always say great? It's what it means to you, what it means to me as growing up here. I always refer to, I haven't grown up, I've just gotten older, so every day is a learning experience. You had a multitude of friends over the years. There are still many of my friends that I grew up with. We had fun at the lake when it was formed in 1952. The businesses here were family owned and operated, so the kids of those families, we all grew up together, we went to school together, and we still stay in touch together. That's the main thing. There's a great friendship and a camaraderie for those of us that still live in the area.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the furniture store that your parents ran.
The furniture store growing up as a kid was a fun venture. Now, it was a livelihood for my mother and father after they purchased it from my grandfather, Ernest Collins. Mm-hmm. And it was many people throughout the community that came in and purchased furniture from them. And then my aunt and uncle, Lola and Hartley Swanson, owned the funeral home. So my mom and dad would sell them the furniture, and then the family members that passed away, it was still Collins related when they had their funeral or had the burial for the family members. The furniture store, we had over the years several people that worked for us in regards to delivering the furniture, assembling furniture. And the treat for us, I say us, my brother and I, when there was an order to be picked up in Atlanta or the other areas where furniture was made, we would get to ride along in the truck. So here we are, young kids getting to ride to Atlanta in a truck. You just thought you were going somewhere far, far away. And at that time, it was far, far away. So the furniture store is still mentioned in a lot of conversations now because of people that could come in. They would visit Dr. Cobble's office, which was next door, waiting on their appointment or the time that they could see Dr. Cobble. They would come over and chat with Mother and Daddy. So it was like a gathering place. And then over the years, when Dr. Cobble retired and my mother and daddy retired, and it was sold to a gentleman by the name of Tom Cable. So that eventually, our relationship with the furniture store was just a memory. So it was a good time.
Do you remember when the lake was created?
I certainly do.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
The lake was an opportunity for us growing up. Once it became Lake Acworth and then Altoona Lake, opportunities for boating, skiing, swimming. It was a gathering place. You didn't have Six Flags. You didn't have opportunities that you have now for other entertainment venues. So the lake was a gathering point. You learned to swim very young. Your parents would know that you were in good hands by the people that managed the beach. So it was just a gathering point for everybody to go to. You would go early and stay late. And later on in years, when we got a little older, still in school, they would have dances at the beach. There was a concession stand that you always think, okay, I'll go swim, hang out, eat, spend the day, and just make it home by dark. So that was the good and fun part about it.
Okay. Talk a little bit about Acworth School when you went there.
Acworth School. I attended Acworth Elementary School. In the first grade, we attended the school in huts or shacks, as we referred to them. And they were old buildings that looked like a military-style barracks. Mm-hmm. I can remember the coal-burning stoves. It was Fannie B and Charlotte McClure. That's who my first grade school teachers were. And those names are synonymous with people here in the North Cobb area, which you're well obvious. Yeah. And attending Acworth Elementary, that was before middle schools came into being. Then I attended North Cobb High School, graduated in 1963. So those were the only two higher education facilities that I attended.
So Acworth Elementary went through the 8th grade? Or?
I believe it did. And then when Autry Middle School, that's when they had the opportunity to go to a middle school.
Right, but that was after you had
Oh, yes, much later.
Talk a little bit about Fannie B.
Fannie B and Charlotte were two people that when they left this earth, nobody can take their place. Fond memories of them, and both of them had the love of children, the love to educate children. They were pillars of the community. They were very active in the Methodist Church. That's, I guess, would be the education and religion. Mm-hmm. And where they lived, many summers, I had the opportunity to go out there to visit, and their father...
Oh, they lived out like near Mars Hill Cemetery.
Mars Hill Church? Yes, sir.
Mars Hill Church Road.
Exactly. Yeah. And we would go out there, and it would be during blackberry picking season, and I would come home just chiggers everywhere. So for those of you that don't know what chiggers are, it's little red bugs that they're very, very small, and they can bite you and not know it, but you can see the after effects. Mm-hmm. But where they lived, again, it was out in the country, but it was such a joy to get out there and just run and romp and play and enjoy the countryside. Not to say that being here in the city wasn't fun, but it was just a different element when people had the opportunity to go out there. Mm-hmm. So they're very sweet ladies, were very sweet ladies, and dear to many of us hearts.
Any other teachers that you recall at Acworth?
Bill Blocker. I did not have Bill as a teacher, but knowing him and his family throughout the years, everybody talked about Bill Blocker. So he was one of the people that I still look up to, and where we see each other now mostly is at funerals. And sad to say, but it's good to see him wherever it might be. There are many teachers, but I'm sure that we can focus on others. But Fannie B, Charlotte, and Mr. Blocker.
You started at North Cobb High School just about the time it opened up, I guess.
I believe it opened up in the 59-60 school year.
Right. And that's the year if you graduated in 63, did you go 4 years there?
I went 4 years, yes, sir.
So you were there in the first class then?
I was not the first class. I believe it could have been 58, 59. I just don't remember. But 63 was when I did graduate, yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a class ahead of you.
I believe there was 1 or 2 classes ahead of me. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check my dates, but I was thinking it's 59 that it opened up.
Uh-huh.
So, well, talk a little bit about that. I know there was a big controversy about where they were going to put the high school. Do you remember anything about that?
I do not. It was just going to North Cobb High School. It was another phase in life, and whether it was Acworth or Kennesaw, it didn't matter to me.
Well, I guess before you, people were going all the way through high school at Acworth School, right?
That's many years before that. And then when North Cobb was built, that took some of the people from various areas in Kennesaw. There was either Sprayberry High School or North Cobb High School.
Okay, so if they hadn't built North Cobb High School, you would have gone to Sprayberry.
Well, that's possible, but that would have, when the old Sprayberry High School was right on Cobb Parkway at All Good
Walker
Road.
School.
Right, currently the Walker School.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that I would have had an opportunity. I don't know that to be a fact because of the districts and where people would have been required to go to.
Yeah, but the Acworth School had stopped years earlier going through high school.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you ever get to meet Paul Sprayberry?
I knew Paul Sprayberry very well. Met him, yes, sir. Did I know as a kid what Paul Sprayberry did or what his capacity was in the educational field? Not till later years. But he and Mrs. Sprayberry were very, very nice people. Lived on Seminole Drive, know where they lived.
Yeah, yeah. What about the McCalls? I understand you lived, I guess after 57, you lived across the street from them.
Exactly. In fact, Mother and Daddy's Furniture, or J.F. Collins Furniture Store, never did change the name of it. It never did become the Donahoo Furniture Store because of the heritage. It was always J.F. Collins Furniture Store.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. McCall's office was at the back door, so to speak, of Mother and Daddy's business. So, yes, knowing them through their business or through their doctor's office. And then you're right, when we moved up to Collins Avenue in 57, the McCall children were still there. Everybody was friends. We played. Mose and Ham were a little bit older, but it was still a gathering of family and friends. Good times. We had good times.
Well, it must have been pretty unusual to have a female mayor of a city back in the 50s and 60s.
Again, knowing or lack of knowing what politics was at that time, I never thought anything about a woman not being a mayor. So the fact is that she did a fantastic job. She had great ideas, and there's living proof today of what she and the council worked to accomplish. So whether it be a male or female, if you got a team that you can work together, that's what counts.
What would you say some of her great ideas were? What did she do for Acworth?
One of the things that she had, her brother, Arthur Bolton, served, I believe, as Secretary of State, excuse me, for the state of Georgia. So I'm sure that through
Or Attorney General?
Attorney General, you're correct, apologize. But through his knowledge of working on the state level and with her working in the city function, I'm sure that they shared ideas and maybe his suggestions worked. She had a lot of support from this community, so I'm sure a lot of the ideas that were presented, she was able to come to fruition on many of them.
Well, you remember things like when traffic lights came in and things of that
I
sort?
remember the one traffic light we had in the center of town, and many, many years ago. We had a red and green. I remember the light was painted silver. It was just one of those things that, you had to wait on the light to turn left. You had to wait on a train if you were going across a railroad track.
Right.
So it was just the only red light, but of course, look at us now.
Yeah. And what about street lights? When did they come?
Oh, they had them when I was a kid.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not that old.
No, I know, but I was trying to think some of the
Yeah.
things that she was responsible for as
Yeah.
mayor. It seems like she expanded the number of streetlights, if I remember correctly. So, okay, so you graduated from high school. Did you go on to college?
I did not. There are people that can attain different levels of college. I enjoyed high school, and I went into the workforce. I left North Cobb. My first job, summer job, was working at Unique Knitting Mill just north of town.
Did you really?
I did. I worked in the stock room, and then when that summer job was over, I went to work for Lockheed, Georgia. And I worked on the C-141 Starlifter, worked there for almost 2.5 years. And then I left and went to work with the Georgia Air National Guard at Dobbins
Okay,
as an aircraft mechanic.
okay.
So working and having the opportunity to see the world over. We had transport aircraft at that time, C-124 Globemasters. So we did missions all over the world. So a wide-eyed kid that dreamed of flying to places that you only read about was actually happening. So that was a treat.
Wow. What were some of the places you went to?
We went to Madrid, Spain. We went to South America. We went to Greenland. Obviously to Hawaii. We did make several trips, or I made several trips. We had regular routes to Vietnam in various places during the Vietnam War. So it was a resupply missions that we ran.
Okay. C-124 Globemasters, I'm not familiar with that. That wasn't a Lockheed plane?
No, sir, that was a Douglas aircraft. If you recall, it was the old aircraft that had the nose that would open up. You could drive vehicles in. For that time, that era, it was a modern airplane that could carry a lot of cargo and troops. And then after we modernized, we went to the F-100 Sabre jet, and then I worked on the F-4 Phantom, and then, I'm sorry, the F-4 Phantom, that's right, and then we had the F-105 Thunder Chief, and then we went into the F-15 Eagle. We upgraded several times, and we did have missions that included the readiness of the Air National Guard should instances happen that we had to back up the regular Air Force. And then in 1995, the entire unit of the 116th Tactical Fighter Wing moved to Warner Robins, Georgia. And I was in that move, and I left Dobbins, and the unit went to Warner Robins, or Robins Air Force Base. And I stayed there for 2 years, and I retired with the Georgia Air National Guard after 32 years of service. And after that, I came back to Acworth, and I was employed by the city of Marietta in economic development. So I enjoyed that. I hope my contributions in working with many people, you see some of the evidence of that today in and around Marietta. After 14 years, I retired.
Sorry, let's still have to wait for the train
Oh,
to
okay.
fly first.
Okay.
I thought I heard you saying something. It's amazing how I don't even hear the train when we're doing the interview.
Well, once you have these on, you can hear it.
You
I
can hear
guess
it,
so.
yeah.
That's, as long as it doesn't blow its horn, I think we'll be okay. All right, we can.
Yeah, okay. You know, I know a lot of people that worked at Lockheed thought that C-141 was their favorite plane of all that they built out there. What did you do on the C-141?
The C-141 had three sections. You had the nose, the mid, and the tail section, and that when you join those three together, that's called the body mate. And I was part of the team that did the nose and the mid section. And we joined it together, and then through the process, after the plane is put together, you put the landing gears under it, and then it's rolled to another station to where they put the tail on it, and then the final assembly. So of all the airplanes I've had the opportunity to ride on in my life, I only had the opportunity one time to ride on the C-141. So I helped make them, but only had the opportunity to ride on one. So that was enjoyable.
So you made a career of the Georgia Air National Guard for, what, 32 years?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And and retired from there. And then, let's see, I guess, City of Marietta for
14 years.
14 years, okay.
Right.
Why don't you talk a little bit about the Office of Economic Development and just exactly what you were doing in Marietta from, I guess, 97 to 2011, is that?
2012.
2012. Why don't you talk a little bit about the kinds of developments that you were responsible for in Marietta in those years?
During my tenure with the City of Marietta, economic development was the buzzword. Many things were happening in the Southeast as well as all over the United States. So the City of Marietta wanted to put together a team that felt like we needed to talk to the people. We needed to put our prize, so to speak, out there. What Marietta means to us, what it would mean to you. One of the things that was highly important was to keep in the businesses that you had there. You want growth, but you need to keep the businesses that have made Marietta what it is today. With the addition of new businesses, that just adds to the tax base. It adds to the residential elements and the people having children that go to school. So all of these elements, you have to provide the utilities. You need to make sure that you're competitive. You need to make sure that you have the housing for people that might be moving in, or at least you hope they move in. Over the years, you work with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is one of the big employers in Marietta. You have various medical groups, even Wellstar, Kennestone, with what they have done over the last several years. That's a big economic engine for the city of Marietta, Cobb County, and the state of Georgia. So there's so many that you need to know what their needs, their wishes, and wants are so that you can accommodate it. We work very closely with the state of Georgia Department of Economic Development. Again, it was a partnership. You needed the people that had the tools and the information that could help you land or bring these businesses into Marietta. So it was very critical that you worked with other people. And it's competitive. It was very, very competitive.
Well, you were living in Acworth all this time, I guess, while you were working in Marietta. So, and you were very much involved in local government here. Why don't we switch to that for a while? You're still working at the Georgia Air National Guard.
Correct.
But you got elected to the city council and took office in 1977.
That's correct.
Was there an issue or a concern about the city that propelled you into office in 77 that made you want to run for office?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
I was approached by some people asking me to consider. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would ever be involved in politics. It was running fine, at least what you read, and there were no issues. However, there's always issues that might need your attention, and you think, well, I could do a better job than that. That was never my concept. When the people asked me would I consider it, of course I talked it over with my mother and father and wife at that time, and I also had to talk it over with my employer. Not knowing what time elements would be involved, I didn't want it to take away from my job. That was primary. Being a municipality, you did not have to declare a party. It's nonpartisan. So with the Hatch Act, that kept me, that made me available to run for a council or mayoral position.
Oh, you couldn't run for the legislature?
No, sir. Not as long as I was employed by the Georgia Air National Guard.
Uh-huh.
So what I did is I got the approval from everybody and I ran. And it was a 5-person race that first time I jumped in. And I was fortunate enough to win. You can say fortunate enough or unfortunate, whichever side you want to look at it. Going into this, I had no idea what to expect. And again, it was a learning experience from day one, and it was a learning experience from the last day I served as mayor, which was in 1992. I did serve from 77 to 1988 as council member, and then I ran for the unexpired term of Wally Pizzotti at that time, and then I won, and then I ran for the 4-year term. So
Okay.
I served until 1992 as mayor. And one of the things that you do or should do is get to know the people that you work with, the people that you can go and talk to get the inside facts, to educate you on how you can make decisions. What's the best format for each individual is their own way that they can address an issue. That's by learning what you need to educate yourself. We went through several council member changes. In fact, I did not run for re-election during one time, but then I said, you know, I can do this. And fortunately, I was re-elected, and I went on to serve. And then, like I said, I ran for mayor. I can say that I enjoyed it. There were some times that you were frustrated and you couldn't get things done, or there were reasons, whatever it might be, that you had to delay some things. You want to take care of your town first. That's the most important thing, the people. You want to attract business. It's a full-time job, and it's not a 9 to 5 like a lot of people think, or you've got to be accessible to people. And the reason I didn't choose to run in 1992 is because the word was that our unit at Dobbins was being transferred or moved to Warner Robins. And I felt like that if I did run at that time and was elected for 4 years, I was still employed, and that was my primary source of income. So I chose not to run in 92. And after retiring in 97 from the Guard, then I went back into the employment with the city of Marietta, and I didn't feel right to look at the opportunity of running again. So my tenure as a elected official in Acworth, I said I enjoyed it. Thank you very much to all who voted for me. So I've never considered or had a desire.
So you were not a career politician?
No, I think my time was hopefully well spent. And
Well, that's, let's see, I guess. Okay, well, why don't you talk about the 12 years on the council, 4 years as mayor, really a 16-year run in office in Acworth. Talk about what happened in Acworth in those years. How did Acworth change in that 16-year period?
You like to think that everything that change can be good for everybody. Of course, you cannot please everybody. And it was a transition period. We were on the cusp of things that were happening all around us. For many years, people thought Acworth was either in Bartow, Cherokee, or Paulding County because we're right here at the corner of all three counties. So letting people know that we were still one of the 6 cities in Cobb County. So it was a major move that we worked with the Chamber of Commerce. They were very helpful in the early years or during my tenure working with them and promoting Acworth, as well as the other 5 municipalities. You worked with the state. It was a area that in years past, it was minimal getting state assistance as far as the wealth of knowledge that they had and how they could help you. So we saw growth in residential. We felt like that with the lake being the lake city, that we needed to promote that. We were losing some of the industry that we had because they were looking at other locations and even foreign locations. So what we did have here, they just faded away. Several generations of the families that had worked at these mills sought employment elsewhere. Many didn't move away, which was good for us. There was a recreation program that was starting, so it was very strong. Offering more to the people, that's one of the things that we felt like we needed to do. The movement of I-75, we waited before to see what would happen. Some of the things we might have done, we waited a little too long. But you see the evidence today of what the mayor and council, since I've come along, and even with this mayor and council, have done great things. Primarily the Cobb Parkway, Old 41 corridor is booming, and that's just a great blessing to the city of Acworth. Annexation has been a big part of Acworth's growth. Acworth was just a very small entity, and through annexation, like it or not, that has proven to be one of Acworth's greatest assets. Great leadership, you've got to have people that work together. Like I said earlier, it takes a team working together. You have to be focused, you have to have a vision, and that's what's made Acworth what it is today and continues to grow. So some of the changes that I personally or the council members did are being seen today, but it goes back to when you have a council, a staff, you've got to have a crackerjack staff, because there's so many changes and the things that are needed. You can't do it by yourself. There's no way that you can do things that have been accomplished here. So it takes the team effort, and that's what's made Acworth what it is today.
I was thinking as you were talking that I-75 opened up about the year that you went on the city council.
That's correct. That is correct.
Now, and how did that affect, I guess a lot fewer cars were coming down Main Street because, well, they wouldn't be going down Main Street. Fewer cars would be going down US 41 because of I-75.
Right. Well, the evidence you see right now of the improvements, if you will, or the need for more room on I-75 by the express lanes being put in. At that time, Acworth was not in the 75 growth period. It was between Cartersville and Marietta. And of course, as you're well aware of, KSU was fortunate enough to have acquired land, and you see the growth that has happened there along the I-75 corridor. So what Acworth had to do with parts of I-75 not being in Cobb, or Acworth not being on the I-75 corridor, you have Bartow and Cherokee, then you had no opportunity to try to go after growth because you would have been encroaching on another county. And that would take legislative acts to try to do things in other counties. So that was a hindrance to us for many, many years. So now the growth on this side of I-75, or the south side, has grown. Hickory Grove Road, Baker Road, that's where the growth is now. So I-75, it's been a boom to Cobb County and Georgia because it's a pathway north, pathway south, major pathway.
But not for Acworth
It's
to begin with.
Not to begin with, no, sir.
So what happens to US 41 when I-75 opened up? Motels weren't going to survive.
There were a lot of the mom and pop hotels, the chenille places that had the various things that for tourists would stop and look at. So yes, they did go away, but there were opportunities for development. And from the north of Acworth on Cobb Parkway to the Kennesaw city limits, it's just a boom. And that's the only thing you can say. It was a boom for growth.
So what did the city do to encourage that?
It was annexation. And you've got to understand is people look at Acworth, it does have limits, but it has also address. If you're in the Acworth address, the zip code, you can have that tagline is yes, you are in Acworth. The annexation for that portion of Acworth has been tremendous. So Acworth has grown in area as well as in addresses that people can say, I'm from Acworth. So that's what I see is that Cobb Parkway corridor. And there are some other opportunities that are continuing out there. So that's good to see.
Talk a little bit about Acworth Lake. I think the Acworth Lake Authority was pretty inactive at the time that you were mayor and on the city council, wasn't it?
It was. Again, when you say Acworth, the lake city, at that time, we felt like that with the skiing opportunities on Lake Acworth, Altoona Lake, swimming, camping, that was not offered here. Now the size has something to do with it because it is a tributary of Lake Altoona. And with no skiing, no motorized boats, then that was more of a gentle setting that people could come canoes, and now with kayaks, paddle boards. And I think there are some opportunities that have been presented for more beach area. And it is a getaway. A lot of families come up here because they may not have an opportunity to go to Florida or enjoy the beaches of South Georgia. So the Lake Authority became more active. I will say that there was a movement to try to get a slide built here in Acworth, and it was a water slide. Nothing like you see at Whitewater or any other water parks. And we spent quite a bit of money at that time on this attraction, and it just never did catch on. But the fact is that the park area now has something for everybody. You have the beach, you have the canoe rentals, you have the swimming, you have the additional beaches, you have Dallas Road. The slide they have there is nothing like what we spent money for, so it is an attraction now and well used, by the way.
What was Parks and Recreation doing other than the lake in those years?
Coates and Clark Field at that time, there were some ball fields. It was just infancy of trying to get things for people to be able to come utilize. There were little leagues, there were optimist clubs, there were various other organizations that had little league baseball. And then with North Cobb coming in, then they had the baseball team, started their baseball teams, which meant there was a area for growth in the city leagues as well. Mm-hmm. So the Parks and Recreation Department has just absolutely come a long, long way in improving opportunities for people and kids to get out and enjoy the lake, the ballparks.
Talk about Main Street. It's really booming nowadays and looks really pretty going through town. When did that start to renovate the old buildings and bring in all the restaurants and such as that?
That has come along in the latter years. There was not that big a movement during my tenure, but a lot of the old buildings were in need of repair. And with the vibration from the trains that come through here on a daily basis, then that was not one of the things that people were looking at to try to rehab. Historical, yes, on the other side of Main Street. Mm-hmm. So over the years, the buildings became inhabited. It was hard to get people to look at them, to put a business in. So it was just determined by councils, mayor and councils, that it was best. Parking was an issue with the growth that Acworth was experiencing. Mm-hmm. And the restaurants you see nowadays and the attraction, it is a destination. And that's great to see. Really gives people an opportunity in getting out, seeing what Acworth is, whether they still think it's in Cobb County or Cherokee or Paulding or Bartow. So,
well, somebody was ingenious in putting those parking spaces right across Main Street from where the businesses are.
Right. A lot of people said you're taking part of Acworth history. Well, it was going to crumble and fall, and the money being put into these buildings, there was no return for it. So the people that came up with that idea and the landowners, it had to be, again, a joint effort to make sure that those buildings were preserved in some type of way through memories and pictures. Mm-hmm. So, yes, it has changed drastically over the years, because a lot of times when we get together or people come into town and you want to show them Acworth, well, what was here? And fortunately, I can remember a good many of them. Mm-hmm. And it's been a great change for the downtown area.
Well, why don't you just talk in general about how Acworth has changed over the years, for better or worse?
More traffic,
Uh-huh.
more opportunities for people to move to Acworth in the local area. Acworth, to me, having never lived in another place, I wouldn't know what it's like. Having the opportunity to visit other places has been just one of those wide-eyed kid dreams when I was had the opportunity to fly all over the world. But I've never wanted to live anywhere else. I've never, ever had any desire to move from Acworth. When I retired, when I retired, somebody said, "Do you think you'll move somewhere else?" I said, "My next move, it will be to Liberty Hill Cemetery." And I hope that's a long time off. Raising a family here, I think it's ideal. Have great quality schools, churches, just fantastic. A lot of the people, one of the things that it was always not a joke, but it was talked about, is I grew up in the Acworth First Baptist Church. We had the Presbyterian Church, we had the Methodist Church, and we had the Christian Church. Mm-hmm. During the summer, everybody would go to their vacation Bible schools. So whether you were Methodist or whatever faith you were, you would attend churches to go to the Bible schools, because somebody would say, "Well, come on, go to my Bible school," or "Come on, go to my Bible school." So it was that camaraderie. So you got to know the churches. You got to know the people that went to the churches. And that's a very strong attribute for the city of Acworth. And I'm glad to see that continues. But growing up, I have one brother who lives in Columbia, South Carolina, he and his wife. Uh-huh. And when he comes back for visits, he'll be driving and I'll tell him, "Well, why don't you turn left?" And he says, "Well, where's this going to take me?" Because of the changes that have occurred from when he lived here as a kid, learned to drive here as a kid, So he doesn't realize the changes that have been made to Acworth till he'd spend some time here. So it's changing. It changes every day. And I like to say for the better.
I'm out of questions unless you can think of anything we should add to this.
I'm just honored to be able to sit down and express some of the things I've sort of meandered around, but at least maybe whoever might view this kiosk and whoever they might select to listen to, I hope that maybe I've shared some type of information that they can take home with them.
This has been fabulous.
Well, good.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, thank you.